My name's Matthew Leach and welcome to the Bailiwick Express podcast. The States are being faced with an impossible decision: finish the Hospital Modernisation Project or complete the education programme. It was never meant to come to this, but tight public finances will force at least one very important capital project to be mothballed. This is unless a compromise can be reached before July's capital projects portfolio debate. After being invited to the PEH to revisit just how important the second phase of Health and Social Care's modernisation project is, I sat down with the President of the Committee, Deputy Al Brouard, and the Programme Director for Hospital Modernisation, Helen Ridgwick, to discuss the future of healthcare in Guernsey and why the island simply can't wait for a refurbished and rebuilt hospital. We will, I suppose, kick off with the big discussion at the moment. The reason I came to the hospital today in the first instance was to discuss the Hospital Modernisation Project, and I kind of wanted to just pick off from the beginning and see if, Al, when P&R put these proposals in for the reshuffling of capital projects, was it something you were expecting, or was it kind of a surprise?
I wasn't expecting for education to go ahead of health, in my personal view, and I think most of my committee as well were probably surprised. But that's P&R's prerogative. We've got 3 months to persuade them with regard to the order or come up with a different plan. But we are fairly convinced that we really need to press on with phase 2 sooner rather than later, because just of all the issues that you learnt about this morning.
And so what kind of conversations have you had since with P&R and ESC as well? Have there been conversations to try and dovetail the project, to try and find a middle ground?
Yes, we've been having discussions with ESC and also with P&R. We've written to P&R. We've also had members of P&R come to our presentation, which was very similar to the one that you've received this morning, but for deputies. So we're engaging all the time, and there are plans afoot, I understand, for some proposals that may come forward in the July debate. But of course, we need to continue to press on. We don't have a choice. The demographics aren't going to be changed by anything that P&R do. We're going to have to face that particular conundrum whether we like it or not, and hence the need for us to press ahead.
Because it sounds very important that we get, clearly incredibly important that we get this project, the second phase of this, across the line. I just want to hear again, what does happen if education programme gets prioritised in the upcoming debate?
Well, I haven't really worked out that scenario, but I would say that we would have to mothball phase 2, continue as we are. Ireland will be faced with a higher cost when they do decide to do it, because they won't have a choice. We will have to do phase 2 at some stage. It'll just be more expensive. We will lose more staff. We will be unable to attract staff in the interim. Helen, is there anything you'd like to add on that?
Well, I think it's just to second what you said, Al. It's been called the Silver Tsunami. Yes. By our colleagues at the MSG, and I think that was from one of our colleagues who'd worked in Singapore, and they've invested significantly in Singapore to prepare for the Silver Tsunami that's coming. So it is inevitable, it is coming. So if things are mothballed, all that will happen is that obviously the risks that we're currently in, that the clinicians are working so wonderfully within at the moment, they will still be there. As the demand increases, if we haven't got the facilities to enable us to cope with that, then risks are going to get higher. We're going to really struggle to attract and retain people, and we just won't be able to meet the demands of the population.
You say the Silver Tsunami is coming. It sounds like we're discussing it as if it's already here, because we talk about the winter stress, and now it sounds like it's all year round.
It's all year round, and it is here. The first bit of it has arrived. We had 5 ambulances waiting outside ED earlier on this month. So it's a problem we are seeing now. What we need to do is convince my fellow politicians and islanders that they need to come forward and support the hospital modernisation, because the issues aren't going to go away.
And this is, I wanted to just quickly touch on one thing, because during the discussions today, there was a question I wanted to ask about off-island treatment. I know there was potentials for different ways of approaching the issues that we're facing. I did want to ask specifically if a pan-island kind of cooperation, have discussions happened with Jersey about potentially moving things across and holding different surgeries in different islands, or is that something that is not going to work in this scenario?
I think that certainly discussions are going on with Jersey, and we're due to meet their president or their minister shortly. But we also need to remember that we are an island in our own right, so we need to be resilient for ourselves, not only to make sure that we can manage any issues, but we also have to be able to stabilise patients before we then pass them on to the UK. And very gratefully, the UK are able to take our patients. But it's not a long-term solution for us to send our normal patients to the UK for treatment. That is not sustainable. And of course, we pay for that privilege.
And money is, like, I suppose, the operative word here, because quite interestingly from the presentation we saw today, to note is the finances and the forecast for if this does get delayed. I mean, this is going to cost us a lot of money if we don't do this now.
Absolutely. But the island will rue the day that it didn't, because it will still have that problem. That those people are still going to be ageing, and they're still going to be needing more and more treatments. So either they don't get the treatment, or they're going to wait longer for it. And that's something we're trying to avoid. We've already seen what the pressures look like today, and you can see what the waiting lists, thanks to COVID and a few other issues. But that problem is not going to get any easier as we go forward with the, as Helen said, the silver tsunami coming up. We need to look after those people. Those are our families. Those are our children. Those are our grandparents. They need a modern, functioning hospital, fully staffed.
And this is clearly a very passionate topic for all the people involved today. I mean, how difficult is it going to be for morale for the hospital, for the staff involved, if this doesn't go the way that you would hope it would?
Well, it won't be good at all. I mean, anybody who's thinking of coming here may consider not. Some of the people who are here may consider actually they may need to move to a different location for their career. We have to remember that we fish in a global pond for healthcare workers. We are very grateful for those who come here, and we're very grateful for those who come here on agency, because they can go anywhere in the world at the moment. Trying to find a gastroenterologist is like looking for hen's teeth. They are very much in demand, and we have to make ourselves as attractive as possible so that they wish to come and work here and continue to practice.
I'm glad you touched on gastroenterology, because you did bring that up in your general update to the States last week. You mentioned it as a recovery initiative. Are there other similar recovery initiatives that are as urgent that need to be sorted?
Yes, there are a couple. I can't list them off the top of my head, but I believe we're looking at in the social care side. We've got some recovery issues that we're looking to fund. I don't know if you've got any more details on that.
Not into details of different programmes, but just to rest assured, we have a waiting list initiative that we work at officer level. We work with clinicians, and we're looking at all of the data. We track all of these so that we are on top of where the waiting lists are, what's causing them. We literally track how many people come on, how many go off, what's the trend looking like, how do we think it's best for us to actually manage that. So things like opening de Havilland ward in the hospital, we've seen with the orthopaedic waiting list, we've seen they're actually, as you have more people coming on and less going off, it immediately turns it red. Well, we're back into green, so we still do have waiting lists, but we're taking more people off than are coming on as a result of the initiative that we've actually done here on island. So those are the types of things that we're doing all of the time to manage those waiting lists.
And with the gastroenterology team that's coming over, I think they're here
this week.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So that's going to give us a great boost to reduce that list, and also it's not only about lists. There's people at the end of every single statistic, and it's making sure that we look after islanders as best we can. And to be fair, since COVID, we have struggled on that particular area, and I know there is a turn that people are getting seen, but the delay is not acceptable, and we need to be on top of it.
Last week during the States debate, following your general update, you were quizzed on preventative measures as well, and I was just wondering how your approach and prioritisation of preventative as well as reactionary measures within HSC and health in general.
Yeah, they're very important, and the two go sort of hand in glove. You need some of each. And we work very closely with the Health Improvement Commission. They also can multiply our funds because they can get funds from elsewhere. So we work with them. They do our obesity strategy and our tobacco strategies as well. We also work with the third sector with regard to social prescribing, to try and get people that they don't necessarily need always pills and potions, but they can also go running or jogging or Scrabble or whatever, art, painting. There are lots of other things where people can get that sort of extra support in life, because one of the issues, of course, is loneliness and trying to get people to feel part of the community and connected. So all of it's very important. It all costs money.
Social prescribing is a great one. I remember we did a story on that last year. That is a fantastic way of kind of approaching things in a kind of alternative way than you usually would, I suppose, and catching people then. Clearly, the HSC is a massive committee. Your mandate, what you're approaching, your workload has to be gigantic. And how have you? You're 2 years in now. How have you found the presidency of this particular committee?
It is challenging. It is exactly as I thought it would be, having had the privilege of serving on health back in, I think, 2014. It is a challenge. I'm very lucky. I've got a very good board from our committee's point of view. We've got some very good politicians with us, and we're supported by a really good civil service. And
I just wanted to, I think we'll just tie up with the last question, because I think that was great, and I really appreciate you giving us the time today, and for showing us around the hospital as well. The whole experience was great. I just wanted to talk about, when you finally come to the end of this term, do you feel like you've done everything you wanted to do? What kind of legacy, I suppose, which is a word I don't really like to use, but what will you have left behind, and in what position will you hope to have left the committee and health in Guernsey in general?
Well, I hope we will have the hospital modernisation well underway by the time I leave. It would be really great if we can get some key worker accommodation. One of our key factors is being able to employ people from overseas to come and work here. It is a difficult market for them to find accommodation. We have the John Henry Court, which is full, and it's been full for years. We needed another one of those to come online 2 years ago. So we are struggling with the legacy of previous committees, not necessarily health committees, but those who've got responsibility for key worker housing, not having sufficient brought forward. And of course, I do have some sympathy. None of us could have predicted Brexit necessarily, and we probably could have thought of COVID or the war in Ukraine, but have all added to staff pressures. But we really do need some further accommodation avenues to us for key workers. So I would like to see that well underway before I put up my my political hat.
Do you see light at the end of that tunnel? Because that is a very topical issue, housing, and particularly key worker housing.
There is very little alternative. These are things that must be progressed, and my job really over the next 2 years left is to convince my fellow politicians that this is where they need to invest their time and their money for the benefit of islanders.
Thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for listening to the Bailiwick Express podcast. The title track was Shift My Weight by Luno. If you enjoyed it, I know it's a pain, but please like and share. It all helps, and remember, you can hit bailiwickexpress.com to stay right up to date with whatever is happening in the Bailiwick. You can find us online, on social, on email, and on internet radio. There'll be more from me, Matthew Leach, and all the Bailiwick Express team next Friday.